So, hi, thanks for having us. We're going to chat with Ben for the next kind of 10-15 minutes about BBH Live and what that is. So, to kick things off, Ben, it'd be great to hear kind of how BBH Live sits within BBH, because BBH is obviously a big historical famous agency, and BBH Live is quite a new part of that.
So BBH, for anyone that doesn't know, big London agency around the world. We've got about 1,000 people. It's always been built on the idea of difference. This was one of our first posters that we did when back in the day when people only wore blue denim and nobody wore black denim. And it was the first poster looking at the black sheep going a different way and when the world zigzagged. And that's what's always embodied any BBH work. But time has moved on, and what we've seen is the advertising business has remained stable, and unsurprisingly, clients are increasingly spending in lots of different areas as user behavior differs. And to respond to that, we've built a model around connected specialisms, which is looking at, there's still a core advertising business, which is the majority of our work, but there's specialisms that we've attached to the main business. Some is, for example, Black Sheep Studios is video production. One of them that I run is called BBH Live. And BBH Live is trying to respond to the move away from traditional or above-the-line advertising. And as we see an increased time of users being spent in social and digital, we've got a specialist group built for that. There's, I think, when you look at the industry, the specialists in social and content has often been driven by how many likes can we get, how many retweets can we get, looking at lots of soft metrics. What we try to apply with Live is, yes, we look at some of those soft metrics and are still looking for fame like any agency does, but we're trying to apply the same level of rigor and strategic thought that we apply to a big TV campaign to content. And so we're looking at things that really, really matter for metrics for brands, which is looking at brand metrics, how can we move them? And we've done some great work with Twitter looking at how we can measure the long-term impact of brand perception over time on social platforms. We've done that with Tesco in the UK, and then just directly linking it through to sales. It seems like it's not the most revolutionary thing to say, but across social platforms, people aren't measuring brand and commercial data enough. So it's looking at that. And we talk about that sort of mindset as being grown-up social, in that I think when you look around the room, there's not many teenagers in the room right now. And that's what social used to be about, is who's the youngest person with an internet connection, and therefore they can be in the social team. And so we talk about grown-up social, where it's actually professional people doing the job, and it's actual people who have been in the industry for more than a year. And it's people that can think about marketing campaigns rather than just producing lots and lots of content. So we talk about, it's not about always on, it's always campaigning. It's about trying to take some of that history of what BBH is about, which is craft and strategic thinking, and put it into new formats like moments, like GIFs, which is incredible for some of our aging art directors to start thinking about. And lastly, it's trying to break people away from, exactly as Seth Godin said, into thinking about how do you actually capture attention. When there is an amazing cat video above your piece of branded content, why are people going to watch yours instead of that amazing cat video? So it's really trying to get people to think in a different way, and that's really what Live's about.
Cool. So BBH has got some kind of incredibly famous brands on its roster, so BA, Audi, KFC, Ray-Ban. Lots of those are quite kind of traditional brands, lots of them are doing some new things. With a new proposition like BBH Live, what are the kind of challenges that are presented by that, and how do you kind of get around that?
So a lot of it is talent, and so we've brought a lot of new people into the building. There's been training programs before in the past within the agency, and that works to a certain extent, but a lot of it has just been looking for specialists who have a passion for it and are willing to put this work as a priority. I still think that despite everybody being excited about these platforms, it's actually clients and platforms that are seeing the potential of these spaces and not agencies. So part of it's talent. The other way is how that talent works. And so being able to properly integrate with everyone else in the accounts and try and have your voice up front. So that's having impact on the creative, which can often be hard. Helen and I were just talking before about trying to get hashtags put on TV campaigns is still a battle sometimes. And it's also then about trying to get it measured in the right way, is that we're never going to be able to get more of this work away if we can't tie it to the same metrics that TV is measured on, that print is measured on, that your email campaign is measured on.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some amazing work. I mean, Antoine's already talked through niche and some of the creator stuff. How are influencers and creators kind of shaping BBH work and output at the moment?
So I think there's a really interesting challenge with creative agencies with influencers and creators is about trying to hand over that creative idea. Because our creative directors are often so protective of what the idea is and what the brand is about. But really the untapped potential is trying to see the idea flex in different ways, but it's also just about media efficiency. We've seen it from the speed of working with, we've worked with a really, really influential gamer in the UK called KSI. He plays FIFA 24 hours a day. And just working with him of just producing two separate campaigns, the reach that we got was absolutely phenomenal. And that scales from with someone as influential as him right down to some working with fashion influencers in getting to a credible space for brands to play in rather than it just being paid media as well.
I can't imagine playing FIFA for 24 hours a day.
He's really good at it.
Well, shockingly. Yeah, you'd hope he was really good at it if he played that much FIFA. And so we've talked a lot about kind of going live and actually what does that mean? Does that mean for BBH going live? Is it always about live video or is it much more of a kind of campaign mindset?
So there's a couple of ways. I've got a couple of examples here. There's it's just been our Queen's 90th birthday. So there's a lot of attention on her at the moment. And she went to the races and one of her horses won. So she won a £50 Tesco voucher. Which blew up on Twitter because she was there holding it and was really, really pleased with it. So we did the live thing, I think almost the traditional live thing of being reactive and just said a nice little quip of every little helps. But then it's also trying to think about how you can build on that moment itself. So we then sent a Tesco delivery van down to Buckingham Palace with some potential things that she could get for her £50. But it's not just about that tiny moment there and then. We've also done another piece of work with Tesco, which was looking at January as a whole and trying to capture the feeling of what people are thinking there and then live. So this was our Twitter moment, which was a feel-good cookbook. So after everybody's indulged over Christmas and has drunk too much and eaten too much, in January everybody's trying to be healthy. And so we put together a moment which had recipes and inspiration of how you could eat healthy throughout the day. All of it built native for the format, all of it using Tesco produce. And this was something we were really, really proud of and was also just really, really successful. But is about really trying to capture a feeling rather than just a spontaneous thing there and then.
These all look beautiful. I love the beetroot soup. It kind of just makes me feel healthy just looking at it. BBH is kind of very traditionally an above-the-line agency, really known for kind of like big cinematic adverts. Do you have to change that mindset when you're doing work like this? Specifically, like the Tesco van is interesting. Like, how does that affect agency process, agility? How do you take a traditional agency and make it snappy?
So there's, again, another example here. This was another Tesco example where we tried to be a lot more agile. So it's not your usual BBH 6 months trying to produce a TV campaign. This is something we turned around within a week, where for Christmas time we went out and asked our Twitter followers how Tesco could help over Christmas. And so we got responses up and down the country and then sent out our Tesco help squad to help. And we didn't know what was going to come back, which is pretty scary and pretty dangerous. Some of them we may have had to direct in how we could help because there's only so many feasible things that we can do legally and what we can actually fit within a van. But I think the big thing is it's about trying to step away from the security of process and that this is what you're going out and you have a rough sense of what your narrative could be in the final piece of content, but really you've got to try and react and use the audience to the best to your advantage. The other thing that this had was just really, really close client collaboration. It wasn't back and forth client presentations. They were sitting there live next to us as we were getting feedback from potential helps, seeing what's being shot in the van, and they're in the edit suite as well.
I think that always helps, having a client there in the room for the whole day when the campaign's live, so you can literally just print out the work and say, do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Can you please say yes, rather than endless emails back and forth. You've mentioned data a little bit, and I wanted to touch on that a bit more, because kind of when you think about it, kind of Twitter's the largest collection of human thought ever, and it's recorded and brands can use it. So anytime anybody's ever said they're hungover, they're going running, they're hungry, it's there and a brand can access it. How has that changed kind of BBH's planning process? Because traditionally you'd be looking at kind of reports, you'd be kind of going into Mintel.
Yeah.
How has that live data affected how you find an insight, think about an audience?
Well, so I've been a strategist for nearly 10 years now, and I think agencies often talk about using data, and a lot of the time I just think it's a big lie. I don't think that they use insight at the very, very start. I think they often use it as post-rationalization to make an idea worth buying. Twitter and our whole analyst team has completely changed and revolutionized what I think my approach to creating content has been, which is BBH and ad agencies are built to create content that is brand first rather than audience first. And if you want to try and grab people's attention and have stopping power, you need to think audience first. To do that, you need to be able to generate proper insights, and that obviously starts with using Twitter. It obviously starts with seeing what they actually care about. So I don't know if anybody in the audience knows about what a massive hit the Great British Bake Off is in the UK. It's ridiculous, but the whole nation is entranced by this weekly baking show of everyday people, who can become the best baker in the country.
It's really good, I promise. It's really, really good.
One of the things we do with Tesco is seeing that there's always chat about a single item or the theme for that week and how they can actually go and make it. It feels like something that people can't necessarily make themselves. So for Tesco, it was as simple as trying to harness that conversation and own that conversation each week with these gifts, which just took the theme for the week and showed how you could make them with Tesco products. It was making it as easily accessible as this meant that we had more reach than the BBC social accounts who actually own the show itself. So part of it can be how you respond to it. But there's also this KFC example, which I love, which is looking at how, to get to audience first thinking, is looking at how the brand can be relevant there as well. With KFC, they're looking at how they can make a cultural connection with their teenage audience and do that at a level which they manage to cut through at. So we've looked at it from a lens of what we call small moments of big joy. So as it says, it's looking at those big topical events. So it could be something like the Euros, it could be a TV show, but then looking at how you can make a really, really small social insight and make that bigger. So we found 3 different interest groups that in the UK. So one really established gaming, the other is the re-emergence of UK grime. And then lastly, longboarding. I don't know if anybody's seen these South Korean girls doing these amazing longboarding videos that's slowly starting to blow up. And we took one of these and looked at what's the conversation around them, and is there any association with KFC already? Gaming and KFC seems to already be a thing, so that went, right, okay, we're now onto something. We feel that there's already an association with the audience. We then looked at conversation volumes across the year and saw that there's some obvious releases around, obvious peaks around when games are out, so everybody gets excited about that. But there's this really, really interesting one, which is most games are sold just before Christmas and everybody plays them at Christmas. When you're playing a game and you're new to it, you're called a newbie. And what happens is I get my game at Christmas, I load it into the machine, I load it into my PS4, I go online and I'm playing against all these other people, and they've been playing it for the last year, and they absolutely destroy me. And we found out it's this actual thing called the annual noob harvest, which is where everybody who's been playing the games gets excited about all these new players that are going to come online and they get to kill. And you've got all these other new players who, after a day of playing the game, are going, what the hell, I've just bought this game, I've just got this game for Christmas, and I'm terrible at it. So there's an immediate, really, really small moment of big joy that we could try and attach a brand to, KFC to, and whether that's providing a service or just shining a light on it. And it's that level of insight that you may get an idea from other platforms, but it's the conversation around that we wouldn't have got without Twitter.
Great. I think we need one very last, final, quick question, because I can see Anton going, 1 minute. What is the future of advertising around live? And do you think there's an expectation with consumers now that a campaign has to be live or at least kind of relevant to them? Little pithy answer.
I think it's about people expect relevancy. So if you're being spoken about there and then in the moment, then they expect the brand to be present. But we can't get caught up in thinking that we always have to be there in every moment.
Great. I think Ben and I are going to hang around afterwards if you want to chat to us. But if you'd like to give a massive round of applause to Ben Shaw from BBH Live.
Cheers.